All right, let's now turn to that tech hearing that's set to begin 2 hours from now. It has to do with disinformation and misinformation, but likely will turn to Section 230. Sinan Aral is joining us now. He is David Austin Professor of Management, Marketing, IT, and Data Science at MIT. He's also author of The Hype Machine, which has to do with these very issues, as we know, Sinan, frequent guest on the program. So, Sinan, we've had a lot of these things already, right? How important is this particular hearing, and what do you think the focus, or how is it going to be different from some of the other questions that these CEOs have gotten?
Well, these hearings are part theater and part substance. I've been happy to see them becoming more substance over time as the questions get sharper, as the topics get a little bit more focused. This hearing accompanies a series of bills that have been introduced in Congress. And so there's a little bit more solid footing. As well, we've had a number of very big events in the last several months, obviously, from the Capitol riot and others that put a lot of this into focus. I'm hoping that we get into some details and some specifics, and we do away with the theater.
So now, what do you think could be an outcome of this event?
Well, I think that it's interesting to see Sundar Pichai and Mark Zuckerberg taking opposing views on Section 230. And with Sundar saying, hey, I think that there could be unintended consequences of any type of change to Section 230. And Mark Zuckerberg essentially saying, we welcome additional requirements for companies to be able to deal with misinformation or lose their liability shield. I believe there's self-interest in both of these positions, in the sense that Mark Zuckerberg would love to increase the costs of all of his competitors and having to spin up infrastructure to deal with misinformation, whereas Facebook might be more able to deal with those costs. And Google, content moderation and content as a platform for them is less of a business model. And so having additional costs in that area is not something that they see as core to their business. And so it's not surprising, but it's interesting to see them pulling in different directions. I'm hoping that we get into some specifics about policies or bills that exist in front of Congress right now to understand what spheres of influence we want this liability shield to be reformed around. For instance, is it civil rights? Is it hate speech? Is it violence and incitements to violence? Is it harassment? Is it competition? As well, what type of detailed specifics will the companies be able to handle? For instance, can they take things down with a 4-hour notice, and so on? These types of specifics are where the rubber meets the road, and that's what I hope we see today.
It's so frustrating, right? Because we all know how big a problem this is. And I know one of the latest problems you're watching is vaccine disinformation specifically. I've had, family members and stuff send articles to me that are flawed and false in many cases. There's always these new things that crop up, right? These new areas and subjects of disinformation. So, I know you've thought a lot about the best way to tackle this. What is the best way to tackle this? What should Congress be doing?
Well, interestingly, our research shows that new solutions are coming into focus. When it comes to public health misinformation, it's a race against time. We need people vaccinated quickly. We need to stay ahead of the variants. We need really to get out of this pandemic for the sake of our public health and our economy. And vaccine hesitance is a detriment, is a roadblock to that. And so misinformation spreading about vaccines doesn't help us at all in a number of ways. The research that we've been doing at the Initiative on the Digital Economy at MIT, Dave Rand and his team just put out a paper in Nature, which supports a system that I have been touting for a long time now, which is nudges to get people to be reflective about sharing misinformation, their research shows that when you ask people to think critically about the accuracy of the information that they are reading, that they're less likely to believe misinformation and less likely to share it. If you periodically ask people, you can also collect labels of misinformation, which can then train machine learning algorithms to scale up more provenance information about the news that we're consuming, which has been shown to reduce the belief in and spread of misinformation. Programs like Birdwatch on Twitter, which are essentially crowdsourcing labels and getting people to think reflectively and critically about the information that they are consuming, can make a meaningful difference. But we have to scale these solutions, because as soon as you start labeling misinformation, things that aren't labeled are assumed by users to be true. That's called the implied truth effect. And we must therefore have labels consistently across the board if we're going to solve this problem.
Sinan, really interesting solutions there, and sort of reassuring that when you nudge people, they actually stop and think about what they're sharing. Sinan Aral, always good to get your take. Hope to talk to you again soon. Sinan Aral of MIT and author of The Hype Machine.